I don't know how you felt when you watched this particular video, but don't you just want to give Wendy negative feedback? She practically begs for it. She makes it part of her professional development, something which most therapists, according to research by Runestedt and Orlinsky, say they value. They need and want to see themselves as improving over time. Wendy operationalizes that in how she introduces the SRS. She tells you, hey, I won't take offense. I'm interested in honesty. You tell me whatever it is will improve the work for you. By the way, sometimes when I show this clip and talk about the SRS, therapists will say, well, why don't we give the measure in the waiting room? You know, clients are more likely to be honest if they don't have to look me in the face as they fill out the form. It's a nice idea, but we have 2 research studies now that show that it makes no difference if clients fill it out in your presence or in the waiting room. The scores are roughly the same. They're talking about you and me and the kind of environment that we created in the room. What does Wendy do? She emphasizes that she doesn't want perfect feedback. She says that she's not perfect, life's not perfect, neither is she, and emphasizes the value of working hard at getting the consumer to tell her what she needs to do to improve the work. I don't know about you, but when I watch this video, I really believe she means it. Sometimes when people first begin using the SRS, and I'm sure this will happen in your case much as it happened in mine, they'll talk about always getting perfect scores, 40s, and wonder, what's wrong with the measure? And I'll usually say, there's nothing wrong with the measure. There's something wrong with how we're introducing the measure and the kind of culture we're creating with the client. Remember, from a prior lesson we said 97% of the difference in outcome among clinicians is attributable to their ability to work and form alliances. So when people say the measure doesn't work, I say it doesn't work with you. What can you do about this? Well, the SRS, it seems so simple in concept. Just hand it out and the feedback should start rolling in. As you'll soon discover, or as you may have discovered already, it's a little bit more complicated than that. I strongly suggest that you take time to write out a script in which you fashion some questions that are task-specific, meaning people are much less likely to give negative feedback when it's perceived to be about you as a person. So if you ask, how did I do? People are not likely to give you a feedback, as opposed to saying, tell me at a point in time during the visit when you felt like the words being used didn't fit you comfortably. One is task-specific, the other is person-oriented. But let's say, even though you've tried, you've written out the script, you've been rehearsing, you still get perfect scores. What can you do then? Should you ask questions of the client? Try to get them to give you feedback in those instances. And the answer is yes, up to a point. The purpose of the SRS isn't to annoy the client. And so I usually say, set a limit. 2 questions, that's what you get. If you get perfect scores, then you get 2 follow-up questions. Is there anything that you can think about during the visit that you would like to have had different? If the client says, no, can't think of a thing, you get 1 more question before you say, I'm looking forward to seeing you next time. Let me give you 1 more hint about that. Let's say you get perfect scores, the client says there is nothing that they have to complain about, but the client leaves and you have a feeling in your gut that says, I'm not quite sure. Why not pick up the phone and call? This, by the way, was one serendipitous finding from some research we did with top-performing clinicians. We found that they were much more likely to have unilateral, unplanned, therapist-initiated contact with their clients between visits. With those limitations in mind, let me give you some ideas about specific questions that we've learned top-performing clinicians ask when administering the SRS. For example, did we talk about the right topics today? What was the least helpful thing that happened during our visit? Did the questions I asked make sense to you? Were there times when I failed to ask you about something that you considered important when my agenda took over? Was the session too short, too long, or just right? What did you think of the response to your story? Did you get the sense that I understood what you were telling me, or that you needed me to respond in a different way? Is there anything that happened during our brief time together that would give you pause about returning for another visit or conversation? These are the kinds of questions that we've found open the door to possible discussion with clients even when the SRS scores are perfect.